At the beginning of June, more than a third of the U.S. population was under air quality alerts due to the wildfires in Canada. If you were affected or you know someone who was, you might be wondering, besides the environmental impact, what does it potentially mean for businesses and for investors like yourself? Find out more right now on UBS Trending. Hi, everyone, and welcome to UBS Trending. I'm Anthony Pastori, and I am back in the studio with my colleague from the Chief Investment Office, Amantia Muhadini. Amantia, there's not a single person in the Northeast and a lot of the East Coast who will not remember exactly where they were when the sky turned red on June 7th. I think it was the exact date, as a matter of fact, which is very unusual for us. I think our friends in California and our friends in Canada can say, yes, wildfires, we know what they're like, we know how to deal with them. We're not used to it on this side of the United States, so it's a strange phenomenon for us. But, you know, we've seen wildfires in the news a lot over the past couple of years. We've been paying attention. We've heard from the insurance companies. How does it tie in to what you do on the sustainable investing side from an investment perspective?
Sure, of course, and great to join you as always, Anthony. I'd say, yeah, I mean, I remember where I was when the sky turned red, and really the conversation I was having just with friends and colleagues was, wow, is this what it really is like, you know? Like, is this what we're going to expect? On that week, we saw the worst air quality in New York City since the 1960s. So that is significant. Now, if we take, you know, we could say this is just a week. So is it a blip? So if we look at data from the last 5 years, we've seen that wildfires have really increased in their intensity in North America compared to the prior decade. And this is true not even in the last compared to the prior decade, but it's true even in the last, call it 3 decades. Now, the reason also, and we're seeing a chart to just kind of to indicate really that how that magnitude, how the scale this summer is significantly higher than what we've seen prior years. Now, what I'll also note here, the reason why we care about it from an investment perspective, in addition to the human kind of elements of it, is that the cost of these wildfires is significant. Between 2018 and 2022, the global cost of global wildfires, including Australia and other regions, was $69 billion. For kind of cleanup and rebuild, according to Munich Re, which is an insurance provider. And so that's why we start paying close attention to say, what does this mean in terms of risks as well as opportunities?
Yeah, and by the way, that red line on the chart before was just halfway through the year, and we're already surpassing it by a large percentage from previous years' wildfire patterns. So it's really intense to see that. On the flip side, we know that wildfires are, or have been anyway, a natural phenomenon. Obviously, there are some wildfires where there's been investigations where maybe it was a campfire that started it. There's not really usually been anything conclusive, but we know that they can be naturally occurring. But how does it relate to some of these changing climate patterns that we're tracking and that you're looking at? Because certainly to see what we experienced here in New York City, which we've never had before, is different.
Yeah, of course. And as you say, I mean, there's a lot of policy elements that have resulted in the scale of wildfires over the last decade increasing. There's a lot of investigation on that, in particular when it comes to California. And they're also used as a forestry management tool. So human elements there are absolutely important. Probably some of these things could stand to change, right? From our perspective, though, a lot of the academic and scientific community is in consensus that as we expect to have forward-looking hotter summers, drier summers, and longer summers, these 3 things, higher temperatures, less rainfall, right, over a longer period of time, are likely to exacerbate whatever negative effects you would project off existing policy, of existing forestry management techniques, even of kind of the human element, right? Why is it that it becomes more risky that someone's maintained a campfire that could turn into a forest fire? Well, it happens if you have a really dry season. And so as we're looking forward, this is kind of where we become concerned that this is not something that is isolated, but it becomes a systemic issue.
Right, and you can look at the patterns over time to see how it is, and we looked at that chart just a minute ago, how it has been increasing, and kind of correlate that to the climate patterns of the drier, hotter summers that you just said we were experiencing. So on the flip side of that then, when you look at it from an economic perspective, certainly in New York City, a lot of businesses closed for the day. Restaurants closed certainly their outdoor dining, but the smoke was so heavy, even inside you didn't feel like you were getting a clean breath of air. So a lot of businesses had to shutter their doors for a day or two. But more broadly, what is the economic, the investment impact here as we continue to potentially see more wildfires down the road?
Of course. So the question is, in some ways, like the so what, right? Why does this matter? The next question is the now what? What do we do about it? But let's come back to that. Businesses shuttering is one area. I mean, you're having this conversation with a sustainable investing strategist.
That's right.
But you could have this conversation with our real estate strategist or someone from the equity team, just more broadly, right? Because one of the reasons in which this matters is from that angle of insurance providers. We've seen over the last year that 2 major insurance providers in California have said they will not be able to offer new policy plans to homeowners.
So if you build a home there or live in a home there, enter at your own risk, essentially.
Exactly. The risk is too high. What does it do? Well, that of course impacts individuals. It impacts real estate value, right? Property value, and so it matters to us as we're thinking about home ownership, which is, by the way, the largest asset on the balance sheet of most Americans. But also it matters for us from the perspective of investing in real estate. So it matters for us from the perspective of investing in other businesses, right? Because insurance here is how businesses as well will say, these are patterns, these are risks. There's a probability assigned to these risks, and we'll just insure against it. That's how we as investors also think. Now, what happens if you can no longer insure against something like this? Then we have to think about, are these businesses located in areas that are at higher, propensities of these wildfires or other climate patterns over the longer term? So it becomes really this additional risk lens that we have to think about.
Right, because it's not just fires. I mean, just a few days ago here in New York area, northeast of New York and Vermont, major flooding because of torrential fast rains that hit. And so there's all these extremes when it comes to these new weather patterns that we're seeing. So flooding is also a major risk in a lot of areas where insurance companies are maybe going to start bowing out and saying we're not insuring if you live in this low-lying area anymore. So it's the exact opposite of these fires. Is the government doing anything from an intervention perspective? Do they have any hand in this? Can they do anything from your research?
Sure. I mean, in some ways, it starts to get into the now what, right? Like, what do we do now?
That's the now what section of the conversation, right?
Exactly. So yes, I mean, there's incentives and that are kind of being put to companies to start innovating around this. I think one of the ways in which we can think about it is more broadly on the category of mitigation of climate risks. So we're seeing additional investment in infrastructure that protects us against these more erratic climate events. So moving away from just wildfires, even thinking about increasing sea level and sort of the increasing intensity of storms, that we're seeing a response that looks like building seawalls or building infrastructure which is more resilient. For us, that's an investment opportunity because what we can then think is, what are those companies that are contracting with either public or private entities to do this retrofitting or this new infrastructure that will be resilient over the next few decades, given what is being projected of more erratic climate patterns. And of course, there's the other side of it of adaptation and sort of lowering sort of not just our risks, but also lowering this path, this pattern itself of climate change, and that looks like energy efficiency, it looks like investing in greening technologies, it looks like shifting into lower carbon energy solutions, all of which we have investment ideas that you and I have discussed in this conversation before.
That's right, clean air, carbon reduction, green bonds, the whole package.
Exactly.
And I would recommend, obviously, as I'm sure you do, when you talk to clients and advisors, to our investors, talk to your financial advisor. Make sure you're having this conversation with them. There's a lot of opportunity here, and the money that you are investing can also be helping to mitigate some of the losses that we're seeing that are affected, or people that are affected by these extreme weather events. So it's all good in the long run. So Amantia, thank you very much. Terrific. Good to see you as always.
Great to join you as always.
Great. And for more information on everything Amantia and I talked about today, plus access to her latest Sustainable Investing Perspectives publication, you can visit our Insights webpage at ubs.com/views. Plus, follow UBS Trending on social media. We're on Instagram at UBS Trending for content that you won't find anywhere else. And you can also check out LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter for more from UBS. And as always, as I said, talk to your financial advisor if you have any questions about investing in your portfolio. Until next time, I'm Anthony Pastore. Have a great day, everyone. And remember to keep your eyes on what's trending. See you soon.